Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to break down the complex, really high-stakes playbook of mergers and acquisitions for foreign investors entering Vietnam. If you're looking at expanding your footprint into Southeast Asia, Vietnam is almost certainly on your radar. But getting a deal done there isn't just about having the capital, right? It's about navigating a highly specific and honestly sometimes tricky legal and regulatory environment. So, we're going to map out exactly how you can successfully execute a deal without stepping on any of those hidden legal landmines. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the investment boom. 2, evolving legal rules. 3, structuring your M&A deal. 4, navigating due diligence. And 5, approvals and fund flows. Let's dive right in. Section 1, the investment boom. Why exactly are we looking at Vietnam? Before we dig into the rules, we have to establish why so many players are entering this market in the first place. Right now, regional Asian neighbors are absolutely leading the charge into Vietnam. Singapore is grabbing a massive piece of the pie. They're responsible for 24% of the total foreign direct investment. They're followed really closely by China at 15%, South Korea at 14%, and Japan at 10%. These regional players inherently understand the growth story happening here, and they are moving aggressively to secure their positions. And when you track where all that foreign money is actually going, the story gets even clearer. Processing and manufacturing is absolutely dominating. We're talking nearly 55% of all investment capital, which really cements Vietnam's rapidly growing reputation as a global manufacturing hub. Real estate comes in second at 18.5%, which makes sense, right? Because as the industrial base grows, the demand for property, factories, and commercial space rises right alongside it. Wholesale and retail trail at almost 8%, just rounding out the top three. Section 2, evolving legal rules, the framework. So the overarching theme here is that Vietnam's posture is decidedly open for business, but it is highly regulated. You generally are allowed up to 100% foreign ownership when acquiring a Vietnamese company, which is great because it gives you complete control. However, beware the caveats. Public companies carry a strict 50% foreign ownership cap, and your investment is subject to specific conditional sectors and international trade agreements, like Vietnam's WTO commitments. So the door is definitely open, but you've got to budget the time and the capital to walk through it. Section 3, structuring your M&A deal, the attack plan. You've got a binary choice right out of the gate, an equity deal or an asset deal. In an equity deal, you buy the shares. The advantage? Instant business continuity. But the massive risk? You inherit every single ounce of the target company's historical baggage as is. Every hidden liability is now completely yours. An asset deal, on the other hand, lets you safely cherry-pick the specific assets you want and leave those nasty liabilities behind. The catch there is complexity. Getting consent to assign existing contracts to your new entity can drastically slow down your timeline. Next up, you have to decide where the transaction actually takes place. You can execute an onshore transaction directly in Vietnam. This means your target is the local Vietnamese entity, which instantly triggers a whole host of local regulatory approvals. Alternatively, and honestly this is a very popular strategy for sophisticated investors, you can execute an offshore transaction. Say the Vietnamese target is owned by a parent company in Singapore or Hong Kong. Well, you just buy the parent company. This cleverly bypasses so many local licensing procedures in Vietnam because technically, the direct ownership of the local subsidiary hasn't actually changed. Section 4, navigating due diligence, the obstacle course. See, as a foreign investor, you aren't just evaluating a company's financials. You are figuring out if you're even legally allowed to buy them in the first place. You have to clear 4 very specific hurdles: strict review and licensing procedures, firm foreign ownership limitations, ensuring the target isn't confined to a limited business scope, and navigating the general legal barriers and uncertainties under Vietnamese law. To survive those hurdles, you have to follow an exact, systematic timeline. You don't just jump in and start asking for documents. First, you conduct an external corporate search on the target. Then, you gain access to the virtual data room, or VDR, to review what they've actually disclosed. Inevitably, there are going to be gaps, which leads to the RFI, the request for additional information. This is very much an iterative process. Only after all these steps are complete do you finally crystallize everything into your comprehensive due diligence report, or DDR. Now, pay very close attention here because there are common landmines that consistently blow up deals in Vietnam. For example, discovering that the target company's owners never fully paid in their registered charter capital within the required 90 days. That is a major compliance violation. Or maybe finding out that the company operates entirely outside of its legally registered business lines. Even worse, you might uncover nominee arrangements, which is where someone is secretly holding shares on behalf of someone else. Those are strictly not recognized under Vietnamese law. Finding these issues early is literally the entire point of this phase. Section 5. Approvals and fund flows. The finish line. Okay, so you've survived due diligence. The typical regulatory approval process for an equity deal follows 4 sequential steps. First, for large deals, you need a merger filing to ensure you're complying with competition laws. Second, officially obtaining M&A approval. Third, updating the company's enterprise registration certificate, or ERC. And finally, amending the investment registration certificate, or IRC. You absolutely cannot skip these, and they take statutory time, often a month or more, so definitely bake that into your closing timeline. When it is finally time to pay the purchase price, you must strictly adhere to Vietnam's fund flow regulations. The rules of the game are incredibly rigid. You can only use a foreign currency, like US dollars, if both the buyer and the seller are non-resident entities outside of Vietnam. If either party resides in Vietnam, the transaction legally must be conducted in Vietnamese dong, no exceptions. I really want to highlight a massive warning here. Because of currency fluctuations, parties often try to get clever and sign foreign exchange side letters to adjust the price based on prevailing exchange rates. Do not do this. Under Vietnamese law, these side letters are completely invalid. If the authorities discover it, you are exposing yourself to severe administrative penalties. It is simply not worth risking your multi-million-dollar acquisition just to bypass the currency rules. So I want to leave you with a real-world puzzle to chew on. Investor A out of Singapore wants to acquire 60% of a Vietnamese pharmaceutical company from 2 local individuals. Considering the strict market access restrictions in pharmaceuticals, the offshore versus onshore structuring we talked about, the due diligence landmines, and those rigid currency rules, how exactly would you structure this deal? Vietnam offers incredible growth for those who can navigate its regulatory maze. The only question is your strategy legally bulletproof enough to claim the prize?